Good evening, everybody. My name is Joey Mitchell. I am the president of the Robeson County Friends of the Library. And the Friends of the Library is a nonprofit charitable group formed to support libraries in their communities. Support for the Friends may be financial, political, and cultural. It's an international group. And you can become a member of the Friends by going to the Robeson County Public Library website, and you'll find a Friends button or tab or portal, whatever you call it, on which you are 2 clicks away from supporting a cause so honest and simple that it is often overlooked. Join us. As always, a big thank you to Patricia Terrell, who synchronizes and organizes this visiting author series. These events. Tonight is our inaugural installment of the 2024-25 Visiting Author Series, and the series will be tonight. We'll have Martha Dunlop in a pre-recorded interview from England, and on November the 21st, Owen Thomas, Lumberton's own Owen Thomas, has written a children's book, and he will be here talking about his publication. In December, there's no event, and January 16th, Maggie Thom from British Columbia in a pre-recorded interview will be, and that's January 16th, 2025. In February 20th, 2025, Wendy Webb, who is an author, is going to talk about her book. March 20th, our own Patrick Parker, who is the host of the Visiting Author Series, is his first published book. And he's going to be talking about that. And on April, we've got a confirmation from Alara. So we have a confirmation from Alara Shoup, who is a board member of the Friends of the Library, and she will be here on April next spring. And tonight we have a pre-recorded interview with Martha Dunlop. She is the author of the Starfolk trilogy and Wild Shadow. Martha is a dreamer and a lover of stories. She likes nothing better than spending her days getting to know the characters in her head. She is a tarot card reader and a Reiki master, and loves to chat, reading, writing, and all things mystical on social media, as well as posting pictures of her fellow packmate, Bertie the Cavalier. I think it's a type of spaniel. And Martha is a fiddle player who fell in love with traditional music, particularly Irish, and is also teaching herself the Irish bouzouki. She played her way through her English degree at York and remembers that time as much for the music as for the books. You can keep up with Martha's news, book releases, and extra content on her website that will be on her presentation tonight. And so everyone sit back, and we're going to have an interview tonight with Martha Dunlop from England. Thank you.
Hi, Martha. It's wonderful to see you again.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here speaking to you all.
Excited about talking about your Starfolk trilogy, because I absolutely love the whole trilogy as well as Wild Shadow. And if you don't mind, we'll jump right into it with why you decided you wanted to be an author.
Well, I've always been a huge reader, always loved books, and always wrote a lot at school and university. I studied English. It was only really when the writing stopped that I realised how much I loved it. When I left university, and I started working in PR because I wanted to do writing, but it wasn't enough. So I started writing on my way to work. I used to get the train to work. So I'd write on the train. I had my little laptop. I'd sit on the train and write. And then at lunchtime, I would go and find a cafe, and I'd take some time to write in my lunchtime. And so I think that was when it started to come into being, really, for me. And being an author for me has always been about kind of enabling the writing. So it kind of gives me a reason and an excuse to do it. But it's really about that process and living in the world inside my head and creating the stories and the characters and everything is just quite magical. So it's an enabler really.
Well, it shows true dedication. You know, I've got this image of you riding on the train and riding at the cafe. And I've been intrigued by the genre that you chose. It's kind of paranormal, urban fantasy, magical realism. Why did you choose that particular genre?
Well, I mean, I love astrology and tarot and ghost stories, superhero stories, all those kinds of things. So I love all that kind of mystical stuff. So it felt like quite a natural choice to me, really. And I love fantasy as well, but I do like the stories that bring the magic into our world, into our kind of normal contemporary world. And so that was what I wanted to create really with it. And my characters, the abilities that they have are really extensions of things that are normal to us. So they might feel more intensely and be able to feel what's happening energetically in a room, or they might see ghosts or create from a place of trance where they can astral project, or they might remember things from where they were from before they were born, all that kind of thing. So it's like extensions of things that are normal to us, and that kind of makes then our world more magical.
It's made it just really fascinating for me to read the books. And you do it so well where it transcends from the normal to the magical so seamlessly. And another thing that I really love about your books is that it's set in London and in English villages. And of course, you live in England. So tell
Yes.
us about the settings, what inspired those settings.
Well, the trilogy is set where I live. So it's a small city, very close to London. And it's a very old city. It's old Roman city, St. Albans. And, you know, that in general, it's like Victorian houses, 1930s houses, new houses, but there is a section right in the centre of town that's got really old buildings. And there's some beautiful old Tudor buildings, you know, they're all kind of wonky and, you know, the black and white Tudor buildings. So they're really, really old. And that's where the majority of the trilogy is set. And when I was growing up here, there used to be in this very old kind of 3-story wonky Tudor shop in the centre of town, there was a crystal shop, which I absolutely loved. Beautiful, beautiful crystal shop. Very close to the clock tower and the abbeys, and this very kind of atmospheric part of town. And that's gone now, that's not there. But when I was wanting to place a crystal shop somewhere in my book, that was the obvious place for it to go. So it was kind of inspired by that. And if you come out of that shop and then kind of go past the clock tower and then turn right, you go down a little, very quaint little, very steep road called George Street. And there's another big Tudor building on the right, and lots of very expensive shops as you go down. Then you go past the cathedral and this and a boys' school, which part of that used to be the old prison. Very, very beautiful road that's very, very old buildings. It's the most expensive road in St. Albans, I think. And so it's very atmospheric, very old buildings. And that is where I have put the Monk's Inn, which is this creepy, crumbling Tudor building where a lot of the action takes place in the trilogy. And that is a fictional building because I needed it to be awful, and nobody wants their hotel described how I was going to describe the Monk's Inn, you know, deeply haunted and totally falling apart and horrible. So that is a fictional building, but it's in a very real place, and a place with a huge amount of history. and the roads that they're walking through are very real. And so the action is all taking place in right in the centre, in this very old part of the town. And whenever I walk through these places, it feels like I'm in my books, which I love. But also, Wild Shadow is set in a fictional village, but it's based on Sandridge, which is a village down the road from me. And I made it a fictional village because I needed there to be a zoo down the road, and there isn't. So it's based on this village called Sandridge with a zoo where there's a place called Hartwood Forest. So I put a zoo on there. So they're all so close to home for me, and places that I go all the time, which is lovely. But the exception is that in the third book of the trilogy, Starfolk Rising, there's a part of it that's down by the sea, down near Bournemouth, and my dad lives there. And Third Books is his bookshop down near Bournemouth. And so when my characters needed somewhere different to go, I sent them down to a bookshop by the sea.
Wow. Well, I totally immerse myself in your books because you describe those villages so beautifully that it feels like I'm transported there, and I almost become part of these places. And the other thing that has really struck me is that you really use community a lot in those books, both the trilogy and Wild Shadow. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, it is really, really important in all of them. Their main characters all incarnate as part of a group destiny. So they come together to do something, and they all have their roles to play in this destiny. And they don't always follow the plan. Doesn't follow the plan, then the others have to adjust, and their roles might change. And so things are constantly shifting. But the fact that they are there trying to work through this together is immensely important, and together they are more than they would be individually, and they are able to grow. More of them come in because some of them are there from the beginning, but then through the books more of them come in. It is that interaction between them all that is so important to their development and to the books going where they need to go. In Wild Shadow, it's quite different actually, because we've got the two main characters. There's Dylan, who is an artist who astral projects as a tiger when she paints. And for Dylan, he's been a part of this community his whole life. He's so immersed in it that he's got stuck. And he's part of this band that he's been in since he was at school, and they're all perfectly happy with the situation and want to keep the community exactly the same as it's always been. They like having their lives going out to work and then doing gigs in the evenings and at weekends. But for Dylan, that's not enough. He wants to have a music career and see how far he can take it. And so they are holding him back. So he needs to find a way to change his community to allow him to actually have the life and the career that he dreams about. And for Tabitha, it's completely the opposite. So she's very self-actualized. She's a world famous artist, but she keeps it all hidden. So she's not got the community at all. She's very isolated. She's creating all this incredible art, and she has this big secret that when she paints, she astral projects as a tiger. No one knows any of it. She's just living, a woman on her own in this little house. Everyone thinks she's, crazy for trying to be an artist because they don't know how successful she is. So she's very, very isolated. And so for her, it's about bringing in the community and making the connections. And for Dylan, it's about finding himself and finding how to be authentic without losing the people that he loves.
Tell me a little bit more about the plot of Wild Shadow.
Wild Shadow, okay. So we've got these two characters, Dylan, who's in this band and has this dream of becoming a musician, and then Tabitha moves into Wildley Forest village because she wants to paint the tigers at the zoo down the road. So she's, as I said, she's a world famous artist, and she's known for painting big cats. That's her niche. She paints these incredible paintings of big cats. So she comes here to be able to paint them, but also she has this project that she wants to do. She wants to release the cats into the wild. So she wants to return them home. So she comes back to do these two things. And after Dylan has met her, he finds that, like, firstly, when he's performing, he starts to see a white tiger walking around. And at first, of course, he's terrified. You know, he's performing, he's drumming, and he kind of gets frozen because he sees this white tiger walking towards him, but no one else can see it. So he very quickly realizes that this isn't a normal tiger. And when it disappears, he realizes this isn't real. And he begins to think of it as his muse. And it becomes a part of him creating and building his creative processes, and also having the courage to create in the way that he really wants to. And so he kind of starts to think of this tiger as almost part of himself. But they also, when they meet, there's chemistry between them straight away. And so they do eventually try and, they start to get together, but there's a lot of aggro from Dylan's friends. And so there's a lot of the kind of pull from the community. And Tabitha has an admirer who's a particularly unpleasant character, who is the tiger keeper at the zoo. And so there's kind of complications coming at them everywhere. And of course, Tabitha has this big secret. So she knows Dylan sees her, but Dylan doesn't know that she's the tiger that he sees. So there's an awful lot of complications to work out, and quite a lot of danger as well, that comes later in the book with some tigers from the zoo.
Well,
but it is a romance. It's essentially a romance.
Tell me about the inspiration behind a tiger.
Well, I used to dream about tigers on the loose a lot. I would just, I dream about them, not necessarily tigers, actually, big cats, lions and tigers. So I would regularly dream about them. And then once I went to the zoo and I was looking at this tiger enclosure, and there's very high fences, but there were all these trees in the middle that were higher than the fences. And I just couldn't get it out of my head. What would happen if the trees fell over and, landed on the fence? What would happen? Could the tigers not climb up? So this really played on my mind a lot, this idea. And that's kind of one of the things that I play with in Wild Shadow is these trees in the enclosure, and what would happen if one of those, fell over in a storm or something. And so, yeah, so there's lots of things in my mind about tigers. I wrote the book. I've not dreamt about big cats on the loose ever again. So,
well, and you wrote about Tabitha and Dylan. You wrote them into the trilogy, the Starfolk trilogy. Can you tell me a little bit about the plot to the trilogy?
Yes. So the trilogy, as I said before, it's about a group of people who incarnate the destiny, but some of them know what's happened, why they've come, and they have memories from before they were born, but not everyone. Beth doesn't remember any of it. So when we first meet them, Beth is in a TV studio. Her friend has given her tickets. She wants her there because her friend works on the show. It's a chat show. Beth does not want to be there and is not interested in the big guest that her friend is so excited about, who is a model and a celebrity who's come to tell this supernatural scare story about these beings who she claims tried to steal her soul. So Beth is wildly unimpressed by the whole thing, thinks it's completely ridiculous, and can't see why anyone would ever believe Amelia, who is the celebrity. But Amelia is incredibly charismatic, and is able to work with energy. And Beth is sitting in this TV studio thinking this is ridiculous, and everyone else is falling for it. But Beth does not manage to keep her mouth shut. And that means that the camera comes onto her, and she ends up in a bit of a confrontation with Amelia, which brings her some conflict from the audience as well. And that is the beginning of an ongoing issue between Beth and Amelia. And Amelia does then also later kind of target Beth when she hires Beth's company to come and arrange an event for her, which she insists has to be organised in this creepy falling down Tudor inn, even though it's a very glamorous, glitzy event. So Beth in knots over this. But also when at the studio, Beth also sees this man called Jonan, who she is very drawn to. She doesn't really know why. He seems very different, but she's not quite sure why. You know, he looks the same to everyone else. So she's very drawn to him. And although when she leaves the studio, she thinks she'll never see any of these people again, of course she does. And she gets to know them all, and it becomes more and more complicated. And it's their time for with the trilogy, and it's her relationship with Jonan is right at the centre of it. He remembers being in love with her lifetime after lifetime, but of course he can't just tell her that, because that would be weird and creepy. So he has to kind of try and get to know her and find a way to tell her all of this history that they've got, that he remembers that she doesn't. So that's all, you know, quite awkward. But he also has history with Amelia. So Amelia is very jealous that because she knows that. So there's this kind of love triangle between the three of them, that Beth and Jonan fall in love with each other, and then there's Amelia's constantly trying to pull them apart and to get in the way. And meanwhile, they are trying to stop her manipulating everyone. You know, she is whipping up panic with these stories of soul snatchers. She is whipping up panic and presenting herself as the solution. And so they know that it's all rubbish. You know, and so they are trying to stop her, which of course makes her very angry. So this is kind of the central plot. But Tabitha and Dylan come in the final book in the trilogy, and their book Wild Shadow was always supposed to be a standalone, but Tabitha just turned up in the third book, and I found that one of the other characters really needed her. So turns out to be about them again, because I really enjoyed writing them in Wild Shadow. So it was lovely having them come into their book in the trilogy and become a part of that community that I've been living with for so long.
I loved that when I read that Tabitha was there, because it was like an old friend popping up again.
Yes.
And as I read the trilogy, it to me was like an epic story of good versus evil. And one of the things that the threads through the book is the tarot. Can you tell me about that?
I love tarot. I think that the tarot decks are so beautiful, and there's so many different ones. They're so varied. And I think they're a fabulous tool for storytelling and for also understanding yourself. That plays very well into a story situation. And Beth buys this tarot deck at the beginning of the book. It's called the Starfolk Tarot. And when she's looking through it, she finds that one of the cards has Jonan's face on it. This is before she knows him properly. And then through the course of the story, she discovers all of these different people in the tarot deck. And so all these main characters have their own archetype. And some of them change. Some of the characters change tarot card throughout the story as their role changes, and some stay the same. And we have Beth as the main character. She is the very first card in the deck. And that is, so she is potential, which is the Fool in traditional tarot. And so she's, you know, at the beginning, she comes to it, she's so new, you know, she's always kept her psychic abilities secret. She's done nothing with it. She has none of the memories. She's so new, and it's all potential. And, you know, where is she going to go with it? But interestingly, Amelia also began her journey as potential as well. And this is part of this kind of constant pull between them that, you know, Beth has come along and taken Amelia's place. But Amelia, as part of her journey, because you can't stay potential forever, right? Amelia becomes, because of her choices, she becomes fear, or the devil in traditional tarot. And she is spending all her time trying to manipulate people by stirring up fear. So that's, she is working with fear and feeding off people's fear as well, and using other people's fear to become more powerful. So she's changed to this fear card, and then Beth has come along and taken her place. And Beth does also change card, of course, later in it, because she can't stay potential either. But you'll have to read the books if you want to find out what card she becomes. But then we also have Jonan, who is, his card is intention. And his job really is trying to pull all of these disparate forces together and get everyone moving in the same direction. And that's really what he frantically is trying to do through the whole book. It's kind of pull everything together and get everyone back into, you know, back onto the same page. And yeah, so that's his card. And all the main characters have their own card in the tarot deck, and that kind of forms part of the narrative. And also helps to inform their understanding of their role, because they are all familiar with the tarot and they know their card in the tarot deck, and also gives us insights into what their roles are as well.
I love the way that you weave all of that together. It's just so seamless. But there's so many layers in your books. I'm a huge fan. And
Thank you.
I've read all of your books. So now I want to know, what are you writing next? What are you working on?
Yes, I'm writing something quite a dystopian thriller. So that's quite different. But I also have another paranormal trilogy in my head that's waiting for some keyboard time. So I have more of them, and something quite new as well. So yes, we shall see. I'm kind of in the middle of my first draft at the moment for the thriller. So it's all still very much in progress.
Well, I am eagerly awaiting it.
Thank you very much.
Is there anything else that you would like to add or tell our audience? Where do we get your books?
Yeah, so I have, for a week, my books are reduced on Amazon. So you can get them for 99 cents each for the ebooks. So there's 3 books, 3 Starfolk books, plus what I said, Wild Shadow introduces some characters who come into book 3. So they're all there on Amazon, reduced until the end of next Wednesday. They're 99 cents. And you can also, if you sign up to my mailing list on marthadunlop.com, you can get a free Starfolk prequel. So do head over to my website. And there's also lots more information about, particularly about the Starfolk books, and lots of background in there. I've got a little kind of microsite with lots of star folk backgrounds. So do head over there and have a look.
I love your website, and I really appreciate you
Thank
taking the
you.
time to speak to us here in Lumberton and eventually all over social media. Thank you very
Well,
much.
thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely to come and speak to you. So thank you very much for having me.
Well, thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.